Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning. We have Greg from Australia this morning, and it's going to be very exciting. So good to see everybody. And this is the last meeting of our sort of academic year that ends the end of July, and next week we'll be starting with our writing reflections, and we'll have the month of August to write and reflect, and so we're going to be ready for that. I think Julian is speaking next Monday. Okay, so Katerina, you're going to introduce Greg, and Greg, you're going to introduce yourself a bit.
Yeah.
We're very honored to have you here. Many of us have attended your workshops over the years, and I'll just read what Greg says about himself. Generally, I'm a practice researcher, developing practices that help in professional practice, especially environmental management, and teaching felt sensing skills to professionals, and in ways that extend Gendlin's work. Felt sensing in conversation and in the direction of mystical experiences and variations to focusing. So thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Katerina. Yes, it's always a bit awkward to be introducing yourself, and I suppose just talking about whatever I talk about and sharing practices with you will do the main of the job, really. But as Katerina said, I'm much more a researcher than anything else. So experimenting with different approaches to practice, specifically around focusing and felt sensing, but also generally in the environmental management in particular, and reflective practice more widely. But anyway, Christine, can I share a screen now? Is that all ready to roll?
Yep, you can share.
Okay, so let me just see if I can share my slides, and then I'll just talk to you. But if I'm going too long, just let me know, because that's easy to do. So this should work. Okay, so let me just grab that. Yeah. Okay. Okay, with that. So, is the screen sharing clear enough for everybody now?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So, okay. So, my work with felt sensing goes across a lot of different areas. One strand of it is in the professional practice space. Another strand is looking at felt sensing and conversation. Another strand is looking at the relationship between mindfulness and felt sensing practices, kinds of mindfulness practices and felt sensing practices. But the stuff I want to talk about today, which, talking with Katerina seemed like something that people might be interested in, is stuff that comes out of applying it, the philosophy of the implicit, which is Gendlin's general name for the philosophical work that he did, to focusing itself as a practice. And my goals for this talk, I just want to describe a way of practicing focusing differently that opens up paths to, a certain kind of mystical thing. It's not, as in the nature of the case, it's not something where you can do the practices and guarantee to get that the experience will be of this kind, but it's in the territory of it's something you may find. It's something which can open up here, and therefore, if you're curious about it, it's something that it's worthwhile experimenting with. The first iteration of this came from my own practice, just experimenting with things. I was in New York teaching a process model when Eugene had me over when he was doing his Thinking at the Edge workshops. And middle of one night, I was just thinking about if you apply some of the process model's concepts around doubling, which I won't go into all the technical stuff about, but I'll give you a bit of an indication of, to focusing itself, what might happen. And so this, without going into the details, the critical thing to appreciate is that I was taking some concepts from a process model and looking at ways in which they might open up new possibilities within focusing practice. So this work all comes out of that experiment. But I practiced myself in this area for a long time, but I wanted to have a sort of a solider base to be sure of. So I ran a practice research experiment teaching people, and the data or the reports that I talk from come particularly from that. So one of the things it does do is it shows how Gene's process model work can function as what he would call a first-person science text. And then I want to touch on some of the opportunities that flow out from that. So this little diagram here is a sketch of how I often experiencing focusing space. I experience myself present as a focuser with felt senses around me and with the space in which me and the felt senses are present. And that's fairly typical, kind of experience that we have in focusing. And I want to just point to some of the movement possibilities we tend to focus on, and places we tend not to pay so much, or tend not to take up so much if our frame is focusing. So in focusing, we kind of, to say the obvious, we work with our felt senses as ways of carrying forward issues that we're engaging with. And sometimes, something in the spirit of clearing a space, something arises within the focuser, and you'll tend to place that out in the space with you. And there's a very clear kind of commitment to the forward movement, which, Gene in his psychotherapy work talks about as life forward, and, in his philosophical work, talks about as carrying forward. And I just want to flag that there are other possibilities there that you may not be used to experimenting with as much. One of them is to just have a look at what it's like to be present as focuser and explore the character of being focuser, letting aside the movement forward of particular issues and projects and concerns, but just resting in understanding being present as focuser. Another kind of direction is to feel the quality of space and just sit quietly with that. And, if you want to get kind of radical, you can in terms of experimenting with variations, you can just let go entirely of the interest in getting somewhere and just be agendaless and experience just being quietly present. Now, those kinds of possibilities are not necessarily ones that you've never encountered. We may, for some of you, that might be kind of a strand of or an aspect of normal practice. But when we orient from the tradition, the movement is very much around issues that arise and on ways of moving forward, which is great for creative work and great for problem solving and so on. But the stuff I'm talking about now takes up some of these other possibilities. And I want to just flag that in taking up some of these other possibilities, it's doing something that's not unfamiliar from meditation practices, where it's quite common to focus on things like, the rhythm of your breathing, for example, or resting in presence of awareness. So there are other traditions where sitting with the stuff that's stable rather than the stuff that's evolving is much more common. What you may not be as aware of is that paying attention to that which is stable is something that Gen's process model work explicitly points you towards, because, and this is technical, he talks about how different kinds of registries, different kinds of recognizings of or graspings of what's occurring arise through sitting with stuff that's kind of iterating. on and on, pulsing on and on. Now, I'm kind of not assuming anybody wants to get into the technical details, but it's worth just pausing to notice that although Jean's philosophy and particularly things like the process model are very intricate and quite challenging texts, they actually really arise out of sitting with focusing itself and seeking to understand what focusing is and how it's possible. And experience in the creation of meaning is more oriented towards what are the practice potentials of it, and a process model is more oriented towards how does this stuff arise, what's the underpinnings of it. When we sit focusing and we sit with the feel of a situation, and we let a felt, something we're uncomfortable with, say in a social situation, and we let something arise, and let a felt sense arise, we're actually doing the kind of things Jean's talking about here, sitting with a kind of pulsing discomfort, ongoing flavour of it, and then out of that a new space emerges, the space, the presence, and the presence as focuser, as you sit with the thing. So anyway, all that's really to say is that from a practice point of view, there are possibilities which, in sitting with these ongoing things, that we tend not to take up. And Jean's work, philosophical work, thinking about the character of focusing, also points towards the possibility of being curious about that. So the particular experiment that everybody's, I think, received copies of, is one which, in a very summary form, is on this slide, which is it's inviting a kind of a figure ground gestalt shift in focusing practice. So instead of resting our attention in the moving forward, in the carrying forward, in the feeling our way forward, we let our attention rest in being present as focuser, or present with the qualities of the space, or feeling kind of underlying feeling tones, like the sort of quiet background joy that comes with being familiar with focusing, that to do with the fact that you can trust the forwardness, the coming of forward movements. There's quite a lot of different things that kind of you can shift your attention to, and they open up different possibilities, which is really what this is all about. So just to sort of do a kind of quick tour of the work that people, the people that I experimented with, what their experiences were. In the small group that I had, I worked with 7 practitioners, 6 of whom kind of had the kind of experiences that this talk is talking about, which is dropping into a kind of strikingly different kind of space, which is more like a kind of vastness hyphen oneness space. But the ways they got there, some people just sat with background qualities of the space. So like a quiet curiosity and a willingness to notice. The stuff in purple, the purpley bluey colour, is from people's own reports. Some people sat with the kind of the pulsing of things, like coming, coming, coming. And some sat with a sense of their own presence. So they found that it was possible to actually shift into resting quietly in these other kind of focusing potentials. And then probably 3 things I want to really pull out from their experience: a quality of sort of radical simplicity, nothing to do, nothing to be said here, a stark silence and stillness, a sort of a kind of timeless space for some of the experiences they had. And then particularly experiences of vastness and oneness. They're not 2 separate things, but all part of the same experience. So you can see there the quote says, a spaciousness that's it's vast, beautiful feeling of black velvety infiniteness. Yeah, it's like I'm the whole thing. So that's in the oneness direction, no longer an individual, no self, infinite self. Now, these are very striking experiences. They may not be unfamiliar to you. I found in the book chapter, which some of this stuff is discussed in at length, I mentioned an example from Jean's focusing book where he seems to me to be touching into this kind of space and talking about it, although he obviously hasn't theorized it in the or in the way I've described here or laid it out as explicitly. But anyway, these quotes point to how people experienced it as being a different kind of space. And if you know a process model, its logic, the second half of it is its logic is showing how a series of spaces kind of arise from each other, if you like. The way a felt sensing space holds a whole social situation, and a social situation that can holds and builds from a behavioural situation. That's the basic logic of the second half of the book, and these quotes speak to how different the experience of space was for these people. It's space that's much bigger than me. Focusing space is quite individual, but in this spaciousness, I was no longer an individual. It's vast. ... So it's a very different kind of space arrived via, this is a bit technical, holding and letting within focusing, via what Jen calls doubling there. And it's also a space with a very different ontology, a different kind of orderliness. So because this is practice stuff, and I'm just kind of reporting the practice stuff, all I really want you to take away from the talk is to appreciate that there are other ways of entering into or hanging out in, being present in focusing space, which have different kinds of possibilities than what we usually do. So I'm going to, my hope is that you will take away from this talk a sense of, wow, it might be interesting to just spend time just sitting with my presence as a focuser, or sitting with the background feeling tones of focusing space, or noticing what's kind of pulsing and ongoing and just relaxing into that rather. And, you know, I'm highly confident that interesting things will arise from that. Whether these particular kinds of experiences will arise, I'm not sure. It's not a mechanical process by any means. And the people who are in this small group had more context for this than perhaps people in general. But I am very confident it's a very interesting direction to go in exploring your focusing practice. And in doing this work, we're doing what Jen called first-person science. And for those who've got a research interest, which there might be a few around, I just want to signal that this work is an example which does a job of showing that Jen's first-person science project can really be instantiated. We can really make it real, working from a process model in particular, and generally from this philosophy of the implicit work. Because this is an experiment which leads to a kind of emergence of a space that's distinctively different from what we've described in focusing as usual, in just the kind of ways that Jen's the logical implications of Jen's schema imply. So just to finish off, just want to touch on some of the ways in which this can be a thing to take forward. It is a major shift in the possibilities of focusing as a practice from a formal explicit perspective. And that qualification is really important because this might be part of your own experience as normal. One of the people in our experimental group had this kind of quality as the background flavour of their focusing, or as a matter of course. Others were quite familiar with it, but for some others it was very new. So it's an empirical question about how new or different this is for you personally. So don't be surprised if you find, oh, okay, oh, gee, this is something I kind of know but haven't maybe named all that much. So look out for that. But it is, at the same time, if you benchmark it against what Jen described in the focusing book, it's really a quite significant shift. As I said, there are hints there and indications that point this way, and I discussed those in that chapter. But from an explicit formal point of view, it's quite striking. We won't know a lot about how accessible this shift is until a lot more people are experimenting with it. And, you know, I'm a researcher, and as you think about sort of the trajectory from research to development to extension, which is one of the ways these things get talked about in environmental management, I'm right down at the research end and doing some preliminary teaching-y type stuff. But I'm hoping that enough people will be curious to experiment with and see where it takes them. And I would emphasize that it doesn't make sense to say, oh, I want to get to vastness oneness, therefore I should be doing this. That's kind of unhelpful for our own process. Much more considerate of ourselves and honouring of the openness of things is to just orient from curiosity. So play with these things and see what happens. And there's lots that can be done to build on this. And it is, as I said, a paradigmatic experiment. So for those who've got a research interest, I really would encourage you to think about how we can do stuff like this, carrying forward Jean's work in this kind of way. And I want to kind of emphasize that in the kind of tradition so far, Jean himself has done an awful lot to build out the philosophical aspects of his work. And there's an awful lot of work that he was central to in the empirical area. But the sort of systematic exploration of the possibilities of the practice tradition haven't really occurred except very close to the three modes of practice that Jean pioneered. So focusing on psychotherapy and thinking at the edge. And this example points to there being a lot more, well, it's a hint at, and there in fact are lots more possibilities for experimenting. And I would really encourage you to, whether you're a professional researcher or just looking from a community of practice point of view, to embrace taking the philosophy of the implicit as your orientation, because that points to a much wider set of practice possibilities than we have well developed in our tradition so far. And the last thing I want to touch on is that from the point of view of spiritual practice traditions, I personally practice in Buddhism and Christianity, and I have for a very long time, like 35 odd years, which is actually probably longer than that, with Christianity and Buddhism. Anyway, for a long, long time. And one of my hopes is that this work in particular will point to, or will create something that can be used to point to the legitimacy of our spiritual practice traditions. The fact, because I think culturally we're so close to throwing things out in an unhelpful way. There is an epistemological thing there, a sort of an intuitions about how we know about things. And there's a kind of pragmatist pluralism going on in saying that. So I'm assuming that, well, I personally am assuming that our knowing has much to do with what we find we can do, because my ultimate intuitions are that reality is mystery with a capital M. And I sort of see everything as kind of helping us orient for practical purposes in relation to that. But anyway, that's another long story. And I am conscious that if you stand, some ways of standing in our religious tradition, this is not your epistemological intuition. So I don't want to say to anybody, oh, you must do that. But I do see there are possibilities there for helping the wisdom of our traditions be better grasped, right, by noticing these kinds of extensions to our focusing practice. And the last thing to say is that if you took the research practices and the creative practices that we know and bring them into our spiritual practice traditions, then there are really interesting possibilities for carrying them forward. So that's really all I wanted to do to introduce this stuff. The slides I put a link to, if you can download if you want to, and there's some references there. So if you're curious about that, you can grab those slides from the chat. And then the references might be useful. This one in particular, the doubling within focusing practice, for those who are deeply into a process model, that's got a very detailed explication of how this stuff fits in relation to a process model, at least as I understand it. If you're in the research world, this should be treated as an invitation to debate rather than just to trust. So this is, in that spirit of kind of collaborating together. Anyway, so I hope that kind of does enough to give you a sense of some of the potentials for practice. And the practice instructions, I know Katerina or others have shared with you. And so you've got some practice instructions to play with. And I just encourage people to experiment and to be curious about this stuff.
Wow, there's a lot to talk about there. My goodness. Maybe we need just a minute to take a couple of breaths and see what we're curious about, what comes for us as Greg talks about these intriguing possibilities, questions, thoughts. Your own experience. This seems like such an important realm of exploration in the focusing world now. Touching of the contemplative and focusing. Greg, thank you so much. Anything that's there for you is welcome. Anybody have anything they want to share or ask?
I can jump in with something. Greg, I'm so moved by your presentation. That orientation that you're describing to doing the practice is very familiar to me, but I haven't myself kind of somehow often known how to talk about it or how to direct people to it. And so I'm especially appreciating like how your range of qualities and interests and skills, right, help to like really kind of structure and ground it, as a researcher, having, worked with this in a bunch of subjects, like the care and attention that you have toward like making something translatable from something that is hard to grasp and inherently like this. Me, I'm in this realm a lot, right? So I'm so moved by your like taking what's all out here and like putting it in a shape that then can have a life in the world, right? Like planting seeds that can grow. So I really want to just honor you. I'm very moved by what you're bringing. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I am deeply concerned or yearn, or I don't know. I long for much more embrace of compassion as a ground for living in the world, and this work kind of opens a way up there, and for multiple reasons, and not least because I have a deep care for non-human beings who lose out an awful lot in our collective frames.
And Isabel, John Keane, did you like to say something?
Thank you,
Yes.
Katrina,
Yeah.
and thank you, Greg. That was illuminating, and it highlights two things for me really. And one was when you described when we let go of the agenda, these kind of experiences can emerge, and within the field of biospirituality, the focusing modality is more concerned with our relationship to our body rather than therapeutic change. And of course, the change happens as a secondary benefit there. So the kind of unit of experiences that you're describing, for me, are part of that journey. and
Yeah.
they come as they come as gift and as grace within that experience. When we let go of that agenda, uh, the the second part was, I think, that Father Ed and Father Pete did a lot of work in translating these kind of unitive experiences into the Christian tradition. But I'd love to see if there are examples of it being expanded into other faith traditions, to see that the commonality of experience of
Yes.
that binds us together rather than distances us because of our interpretations. And I think that there's a huge potential there within that.
Yes.
I don't know if you can point me towards any work that's been done in that area.
Well, let me say, first of all, that I think there's huge potential in Jean's work to be a platform for that kind of work. And one of the goals of this work is to actually show that. And I, as a son, I grew up in the Christian tradition, and I'm still a member of the church, Uniting Church in Sydney. I've been a Buddhist practitioner for 35 years as well, and obviously a focusing person for that long and longer in some ways. And one of the things I'm very conscious of is the ontologies, the pictures of the world that we have in our Christian and Buddhist, in the mainstream traditions, Christian Buddhist tradition. They don't resonate deeply with people who've got a secular Western intuition about life. And Jean's work provides a way to actually bring these kinds of experiences into a secular frame. And if you're pluralist, you don't have to say, oh, we've all got to be secular. You can actually be Buddhist and Christian and secular. I'm all three. It makes sense to me.
I'm wondering, Greg, I'm wondering if you are familiar with Dana and Baruch's work in Israel.
Not closely, but a bit. Yes. I'm in some of the same networks, but yeah.
Yes, from the Kabbalah and the Jewish tradition.
Yes.
That sense of the mystery and the wonder and being there.
Yes.
I remember.
How do you spell her last name, Lynn? Dana who?
Somebody help me here.
I'll put it in the chat.
Right. Very good. They spoke a few weeks ago. You can find them on the Help the Helpers channel. But I was just going to add that Jean and I talked about how when you're clearing a space, you come to this place of the big openness. And he was saying that he would love to be able to spend more time there, and then always would want to do something with it. And I was commiserating with that. Get these treasures, and then you want to do something with it rather than just hanging out and being in that big space. But what would you say, Greg, about the similarity of what you're exploring and that glimpse in clearing a space where everything is put aside in a way, and then you're in just there?
Well, I think it's deeply similar. There's the chapter that this talk's based on has a discussion of that particular section of the focusing book, and I think that there are traces there that Gina's actually shifting into the space with a different ontology. We don't have him around to actually do the experiments with, although we did see this work in an earlier version. But I think deeply similar. I wanted to say, just to pick up a bit with John, I don't know of any places where the relationships between the traditions have been well developed. At a theory level. At a practice level, yes, people do crossings. There's wonderful work bringing it into Quaker practice, for example, and picking up Sufi traditions in Islam, and Dana and Brooks' work in relation to Judaism, Kabbalah, as you say. So, and biospirituality, of course, So there's practice resonances, but I think at the level of theorizing, it's not much has been done. I don't know, as far as I know, my own work is as far down that path as we've gone from a theory perspective of speaking with form, sitting within the secular ground, as opposed to, and some of the stuff that's in the references would be worth looking at. But yeah, but if anybody finds other stuff, please let me know. I'd be delighted to hear about it. Sorry, does that say enough, Lynn? I just was conscious I hadn't spoken to John properly.
Thank you.
Isabel has her hand raised for a long time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for this wonderful conceptualization of the intersectionality of focusing Christianity and Buddhism. And pretty much it felt to me that part of what you were speaking about was what in secular planet right now, what people are referring to as mindfulness. And for putting that into words that are translatable to other people who may not be as familiar with either one of those places. And then what I have really was a question. There's an invitation embedded in your writing for us to sort of like co-create or come up with new ideas of getting curious about how to bring this work forward. And I'm wondering if there is a way that you can say with more specificity, if there's a repository for this work to be brought forward, if that's like a collective of people that are working on this, or are we just going to get curious and do this on our own and then do what with it? If you can say a little bit more about that.
Sure. Yeah. So, well, first of all, no, there's no well-shaped repository for this work that I know of. I certainly have sat with that question, and I've been contemplating trying to facilitate that. I think ideally this sort of stuff should go through the Focusing Institute, the International Focusing Institute, and just be positioned as part of the extension of Jean's work that they document. But that would need additional conversations. If for people who are researchers, like formal academic-y style researchers, like I am with in half of my being, so to speak, then there obviously are opportunities for doing that, and publishing books and chapters and papers about it is kind of part of the story there. Although I have to say that the academic world is not good at researching practices generally. I think there's a lot we can do to strengthen that. I think we need new community of practice work, and I wish I could say to you, look, here's how to make it work. We don't collectively, we're kind of so entrained within, it's not only focusing, it's pretty true across practice traditions generally. We get entrained in the original authors, the auteur, the kind of intuitions about how to take things forward. So Jean's focusing stuff is very much reflects his own finding his way. All of us are following, his path in many respects and making variations on it, but we're following in a practice tradition that he's shaped, and that of course stems from client-centered therapy too. That's why we've got the forward movement work we have in focusing. That's because but also the openness and the kind of undirectedness. They all echo client-centered therapy. And if I look at Feldenkrais, which is a movement discipline that I also practice, people do Feldenkrais, they redo what he did. My Buddhist teacher's work, which is called Dzogchen, people, redo her work. We kind of lack this kind of integrating framework. which I'm very conscious of as a researcher, and a chunk of my work is trying to help us see that a philosophy of the implicit can provide really good foundations for doing integrated stuff there, and which is very much in line with Jean's intention or aspiration for first-person science. Yeah, so I guess that I would encourage self-organizing, and if enough people say to me, please set up a repository, I'll shuffle my priorities and put more time into it. It's on my agenda, but I'm also working on some major research projects at the moment with some of my European colleagues, and that's what's getting my primary time at the moment. Dorothy's got her hand up, I know, but maybe we need to shift to groups soon too, I think. But, sorry, Dorothy, you're still muted.
Sorry. I just had a question. I'm newer to focusing. I might have missed something, but when you talked about not a space for interaction, there's not a need for interaction. I didn't quite understand that. It just seems like, as Gendlin says, we're always interaction, and how do you not have a space for interaction? So I was just confused.
Yeah. Well, so if you're fairly new to focusing, so the main thing I'd say is to let your practice orient you, and so see what kind of concepts are needed. So in other words, but there's a complicated story there, which at least I can only tell it in a complicated way, I suppose. Doing a process first ontology, interaction first, which is central to a process model, falls out very naturally if the job you're trying to do is describe how focusing is possible. And one of the reasons why is because a felt sense holds so much together all at once in a fluid, evolving way. And it's not just a thing in the world like a rock or a tree. It's kind of more like it's an interactional partner. We're in dialogue and engagement with our felt senses. And so Jean's a process model is coming from wanting to make that stuff clear. But all of the spaces we live in have their own ontologies, their own orderlinesses. Like the room that I'm sitting in at the moment, I can walk around it. That's our movement space. So our social space, we're kind of all connected to each other. We've got a sense of connection and disconnection, and things evolving and heartwarming and puzzling, and That's sort of emotional texture of our social space is also very familiar, and focusing is a third one, and this is the fourth one. And for the ontology of this space, people talk about unity consciousness or non-duality and things like that. Vastness-oneness is a phrase that comes out of the experiences of people doing these practices. The natural ontology for describing it is different. But instead of treating ontologies as the fundamental of the real, in the first person stance of genes, you can have different kinds of ontology, using the word in a slightly different sense from the common one, for different spaces. And this is another one that sits alongside focusing in the usual way.
Thank you.
I hope that was not a bit useful.
No, it was. Thank you.
I for those who are sort of stopped in their tracks by the word ontology, it's funny how certain words will just stop people. Maybe you could say
Explain
that a little bit.
Sure.
It's a flash. Yeah.
A little to unpack that. It's a flashy word for saying the nature of being or the nature of reality. So ontology is just I guess it's Greek word for being. So, but but it becomes a little clearer if you think like commonly people will think that things are fundamental and things are in process. So we've got objects and how are the objects moving. In our culture, that's Western cultures anyway, that's the normal background intuition that informs how we understand what's going on in reality. And Jean is picking up a minor tradition when he talks about making processes first. So instead of saying, oh, here's Greg, the body, what's he doing? We say, oh, okay, there's this living process happening here. Oh, and the body's been made by this living process. It completely flips the intuition. And those are two different ontological intuitions in play. And our body, this body being made by my living process, well, that actually makes an awful lot of sense, because there was a fertilized egg once upon a time, and this body was built by that living process that's still me going on. And then I'm using the ontology in a slightly more tricky sense, because normally people think, oh, reality is this way, or it's that way, or it's that way, and you've got to pick which one it is. And you can, but that's not the only use. You can also say, oh, so the ontology of the space I'm living in, the room I'm living in is such and such. Oh, it's got rooms, spaces and gaps and opportunities for movement in it and stuff like that. And then, oh, social space, we're close, we're far, we're connected in with this kind of character or that kind of character. I'm also using ontology like to describe those kinds of things. And yes.
Ways of being and experiencing reality, and we don't have to choose this is the right one and this is not right.
That's right.
We can have many at the same time, and you're describing a particular way of being that focusing can bring us to.
That's right.
That Jean would describe as the big space or the big system, or
yes, large space is my handle for it too.
Right.
But if I'm thinking like a Christian, I might be talking about resting in the presence of God, and if I'm thinking about from a Buddhist point of view, it might be just resting in being, resting in the ground of being.
Right. Yeah. It's just
Katerina was holding up the clock, I know. So to remind, beautifully big clock, I noticed.
Well, I think we could have 5 more minutes for discussion, and then we'll have the breakout rooms from 9:10 to 9:30. I have a feeling that there are people who are just getting ready to speak and to say something from their own curiosity, their own experience. I think Dorothy was leading the way in that.
Victor has a hand up. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. I just wanted to put in a word for the atheists. I just don't see the necessity of the concepts of God or religion for this work. It's whatever you said, and the way I understood it, it talks to me being an atheist just as much as to anyone else.
Yeah,
there is no need. Yeah, thank you. That's all.
Yeah, I want to wholeheartedly support that with my pluralist hat on.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Jean didn't use spiritual language for that reason. He said, send half the people away because the language is spoiled for them, and I don't have to. It's not.
Yeah, that's right.
Natty and Jim and Ula.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Greg, so much. I was just so amazed by your presentation, and the reason is because I was brought into focusing by an Argentinian coordinator who introduced me first to the philosophy of the implicit. And I just loved it because of that. And then it was like going to the focusing manual was so different. And then I got back to studying experiencing and the creation of meaning and the process model. And the more I've gone into all that philosophy, the more ways I'm trying to find to bring focusing. I teach focusing too. I'm a coordinator and focusing trainer and psychotherapist. And the more I'm trying to bring it from that perspective, like starting with body environment interaction, and then finding it in a way not that easy, because for so many people it's like they need the 6 steps and the instructions and more a unit model thing. So I was really trying to download all your material and all your things and trying to get in everything that you were bringing. But I'm really trying myself to find this way of introducing focusing, because I live it in that way.
Yes.
It's like the vastness and the vast system and the interaction. And for me, that is the main thing. It's a way of being, but then it's not the difficulty, but how to translate this into how to instruct this, how to bring that and transmit that to others in a focusing training environment or context. So I'm fascinated, and I really want to read all your material.
Well, I wish you luck. I mean, I think we need to we need to experiment and try stuff out and see what works. I haven't. I've taught. I've taught this stuff a few times, but not many. So I don't have large experience with the variety of people's responses. There is a Buddhist thing which I think is very helpful, which is to appreciate that having diversity in our traditions is very considerate of the diverse kinds of people we are as we come to things. So let's look for what actually helps people, which I know you're doing because you're saying that. But I think that for me is a kind of a central thing. And, we each speak to those who can make sense of what we're saying in a lot of ways, don't we? So I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Jim.
Just muted, Jim.
Ula and then Abby.
Okay. I'm worried I'm not going to make any sense. So try and make some sense out of what I say anyway.
Sure.
I mean, the first thing that strikes me is that even though we're trying to transcend different traditions, I mean, just the idea of science is very Western, and there's a lot of culture that finds its way in whatever you do, and it's hard to avoid. And I'm wondering, do we say, okay, we're stuck with that and we're just going to go with it, or is that something that we're trying to pluck out somehow and get rid of? So that's my first sort of question. And my second is, I want to go back to what Dorothy was saying, because I know Gene always said that when he was focusing with a partner, he would always get much more out of it than when he was focusing alone. And I'm wondering to what extent that can be part of the experiment, or is that a different experiment? So why don't we just stop with that?
Okay. So picking up the first one, Jean's underlying intuitions, which I very much share, and I think they're quite natural if you orient from focusing, are pluralist in the sense that we can find many ways to speak from our felt knowing. And they might well be ways that are kind of dissonant with each other, if you look at it from a conventional intellectual point of view. And what Jean embraces and talks quite a bit about in the extension, in the second half of chapter 8 in the process model, is the wisdom of just moving between traditions and moving between models and doing fresh concept formation, thinking at the edge work, whenever it's helpful. So you let the feeling of what's carrying you forward, what's helpful, guide the use of models. And it's a deeply pragmatist intuition, but it's also very natural once you sit in knowing that felt sensing is what we use to test which words fit. So we don't have our conceptual model and say, well, somehow my experience has got to fit that conceptual model. It's focusing practitioners, we work the other way around. We say, okay, here's what I'm experiencing, at least as I can feel it so far. What ways of talking about that kind of really fit and help carry it forward? And if we're in from that place, then you can embrace all models, and you don't have to embrace models you don't want to use. I mean, I happen to have experienced Christianity and Buddhism as well as focusing the secular stuff, this secular tradition. But I don't have much experience with Islam, for example. There are many other traditions. I mean, I am quite experienced as a Western scientist type person. So I very much live that tradition. but there's lots of other things that I don't, and I just think we can assume, we can allow ourselves to orient from what's helpful. And the second one about the social stuff, well, certainly these experiments can be done in focusing partnership. So it's just that your partner has to be prepared for a lot more silence than usual, because you're going to be, instead of having a kind of stream of carrying things forward, there's an awful lot of sitting and going quietly. But I've experimented with these things a lot, a huge amount with partners. A lot of my work's like that. And more broadly, I've got quite a lot of other practices that kind of build around these foundations that are more explicitly social, which we're not going to dive into here. But absolutely, let's be social. It's a natural thing to do, and it's a helpful, heartening thing to do.
Just one more thing is, what about the traditions that don't like research and think you shouldn't think about things at all?
Well, there's an interesting place there. None of the all of the major spiritual traditions have got places that are like that, at least in some respects, and places that are very much more open. So that is actually a difference in epistemological intuitions within the one tradition. Like when I first got serious about Christianity as a teenager, I was in an evangelical tradition, which had unconsciously a 19th century Anglo-Saxon epistemology as its understanding of what the nature of knowing was. Didn't really understand its own philosophical roots, but the philosophical roots are very much there. And what I would say to somebody who doesn't want to open up questions there is, well, feel free not to. Just allow yourself to notice what's helpful, and go with that. Let that lead you where it leads you. And if you're thinking within a Christian frame, that's like trusting God in a way. And if you're thinking within a Buddhist frame, it's sort of like trusting the underlying nature of reality. And if you're secular, then it becomes actually quite interestingly open. It's quite their genes model is implicitly evolutionary, and there's scoops. Who knows what the end of an evolutionary journey is? That's
I love that. I love the way you said.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy. Yeah.
Ula, and then Abby, and maybe Victor, you wanted to speak again in a moment.
And then maybe after Victor, we need to do our breakout rooms. There's so much here for us to talk about.
No, I don't want to speak again.
Lower your hand.
Okay.
Lower
So
your hand, Victor.
Lower my
Ula,
hand.
you like to?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Greg. I have I worked a lot as psychologist, and then I was a researcher, and then I was became Christian and interested in the Christian mysticism, and tried to build bridges between Christian mysticism and ordinary psychotherapy, and I began to practice as a clinician. And then I came across focusing 2012, and it was really, really helpful. And now I'm trying in an experimental way, because I've been stuck in the intellectual way. I tried in an experiential way to combine or build bridges between different ontologies. I feel very much a need for your way of structuring the whole. Try to come from the experiential, and try to very gently build some ontology out of all these parts of looking at the world. So I wonder if it's possible to continue with you in some way. So, I mean, whatever.
Yeah, I've been working with my friend Jane Quayle, who's my main focusing partner. We've been focusing partners and doing things together for more than 20 years. And she and I ran some stuff on felt sensing conversation a couple of years ago. I've been traveling for the last year, but Jane and I are going to do something in this area down the track. But I guess just send me an email and I'll have to think into it a bit more. That will be the thing
thank you very much.
do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let us all know when you do.
Okay, I'll pass it on. Yeah, you can share it around.
We have Abby.
Hello, thank you so much for this. And I might be asking like a same theme of questions, but it feels like what you're suggesting is for the person holding space to be in a different orientation. Yeah, like the way they're showing up in themselves and their being. So I think I'm curious about how you point people to be in that space, because to me, it's something that comes over time through the transformation in one's perception and being in the world.
So the practice instructions that have been circulated, and they're in the chat, they're one of the links in the chat. I think they are, aren't they?
Is it the holding and letting?
Yes, exactly. Holding and letting is a phrase from a process model. It's Jean finding another way to talk about how we do focusing. In focusing practice, the holding is holding the sort of the felt sense of holding the relevance of the concern. So if I'm troubled in my relationship with my partner, say, I can sit with the sense of being distressed and uncomfortable, and that's the holding. And then the letting is just allowing things to fall out from there. It's actually not. It's not a separate action. It's like I'm holding and letting is the one thing, but it's called letting because it's not something we can make happen. It's just it's kind of like aliveness falling out and carrying forward. And this one also does holding and letting. All of the spaces have that in a process model, have that character. But the holding, what's being held is different. So it's holding the quality of presence as a focuser, holding the quality of the space as a focuser, holding the quality of background feeling tones, like easing, 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 or forwarding, 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 those kinds of things. And then you just stick with that and just let things fall out. So you don't try and make something happen. You don't think, oh, I'm aiming at vastness, oneness, or something wonderful. And how the hell do I get there? You actually do almost the opposite, and that's the virtue of focusing instructions. Jean doesn't tell you what you're going to find. It just says, do this. And it's in the same spirit that you just say, okay, let's rest in some of these underlying qualities of focusing, the quality of our spaciousness, what spaciousness feels like, the kind of rhythms of comingness. So you don't kind of try and do things to make things happen. You experiment and see what happens.
Yeah, because for me, in my experience, is like those are states that which I fall into, that which then becomes part of my embodiment, and that which takes into every interaction. So I'm curious, how that, but I think the pointer of like allowing people to, it's just super helpful to even have pointers of like, oh yeah, this is something you can maybe perhaps let yourself fall into more while in interaction. That in itself is already a carrying forward.
Yes. And I just would say that this experience was extremely important for me personally, because it was the threshold experience through which I shifted from being dropping into sort of larger spaces occasionally and here and there, and maybe not infrequently in some contexts, through to being able to know how to do it. It's become a normal way of being. It's natural and easy for me now to just drop into this larger ground, and and that's in the background of what I'm doing now. I'm sort of instantiating it. Yeah.
I would love to experience that more. Thank you so much.
Play with the experiments. Have a go.
Thank you so much, Greg. I think this
Pauline,
is wonderful.
Pauline is waiting to speak.
Okay.
Yeah.
And after Pauline, then we'll go into our breakout rooms.
Thanks, Katrina, and hello, everyone. Hi. I just trying to locate you on the screen. Hi, Greg.
Hi.
Thanks very much. It's really just so rich, and I love the terms that you've introduced. That probably aren't new to some people, but first-person science and all of that. It's really just, I suppose, inviting and intriguing. You know, how one would bring that forward. You know, and without getting lost in the words, or the sea, the whole usness, so it's the individual sense of curiosity, yeah, I kind of want to just say hello to John Keane, Falter Old John, and I suppose that's maybe a way of sort of saying, I haven't spoke to John before. We're both from Ireland, but it's something to do with identity first, so it's like really bringing the story so far, without actually going into more concepts, it's saying where we are first, in the individual place on our own individual maps, and especially around spirituality and all of that, getting lost in that identity. So I certainly would love to hear the story so far that maybe we could, as a focusing community, kind of like really map that out, where we are when we get lost in an identity. We certainly had loads of new information around child sexual abuse with clergy, but it's new information, but it's almost there's a fatigue, and it's like, oh no, not again. What will we do with this? And yes, I see the value of doing something with that. And I'm thinking more around resonance, that there's a lot of information out there around old science and new resonance, and how resonance, that there's actually stories there. So thank you very much. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks a lot.
I'm thinking maybe we should continue this conversation and not do breakout rooms today. What do you think? Or would you like to touch base with each other in small?
Breakouts.
I vote breakout too.
Okay.
Yes, it gives everyone a chance, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to have our breakout rooms now, and I think we can have 10 minutes, 15 minutes. What do we say? And we want to come back and share. I think 10 minutes. And now I think we better have 15 minutes. And we need time for the poem too. Okay, I'll see you all in 15 minutes.
Could I join one too, Lynn? I've got the invitation to do that.
Yes, please.
If you want
Sure,
to.
okay.
If you want to.
Well, I'm happy to. Happy to, yeah.
Christine, are you there?
I'm here.
Hi.
Hi.
I'll have a quick planning meeting at 10, and then we can speak around 10:30.
Sure.
Good. I like this guy, Greg.
This is recording.
Oh, I don't know that we want to record that.
I do it this way because otherwise it chops the
yes.
files up into pieces. It'll make things harder for Yoka. So
yeah, okay.
But it's a good thing. It's nothing bad, I want to hear about the show.
What's that? Oh, yes. I'll tell you all about it. And what time are people coming back? How many minutes do we have?
1.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll send you pictures later in that case.
Oh, good. So it was a success. You're happy with it?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Did you meet other artists?
Yeah, I met a few other artists that I liked, and well, I'll tell you more later when it isn't being recorded.
Okay, let me see. I think I'm gonna close them now. That's it. Here they come.
Hi, Gray.
Hi, Lynn.
Did you have a good breakout room?
I had Katarina, yeah. So, and we cleared something up. I mean, she was in that group that we had about the being facilitators, and there was a lot of, and she seemed to think that I had something against her, which was completely untrue. So we cleared that up, so that was good.
Oh, very good. Oh, very good. I'm glad. Welcome back, everybody. I'm very eager to hear about your experience in your breakout rooms, and we have only about 3 minutes or something to share. but we have lots to share, and the felt sense of all this underneath.
Okay, I just share a few words. Excellent connection and excellent focusing.
Wonderful.
I concur that the three of us and Steph and you, we held and created a very loving, caring, and I'm trying to find the other word for the space that we held for each other. There was a gentleness and openness there that was held. It's very lovely. And we focused on your painting a little bit too.
How wonderful.
It was great.
Wait, which painting?
In her behind Elisa. Her crane in the water.
Oh, yes. Right.
She painted that.
Oh, really? Oh, that's beautiful.
Isn't it?
Oh, my goodness. Yes. Really is. Anybody else?
We talked about the very practical nature of felt sensing. And Greg's project for the Aboriginal farmers in Australia, where they had land that was quite arid and they needed water. So Greg went and they were felt sensing together with the land to locate the water.
Wow.
Love to, it's just a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Oh, yes. That's
wow.
Fabulous.
Ooh. Wow.
Okay, I think we'll have Dorothy's poem, and I want to welcome you all to next week, the beginning of our writing month, contemplative. Well, won't all be contemplative, but it's kind of contemplation to write, and we'll have different approaches each week. I would be interested in having a conference on mindfulness and the big space and all of this area of carrying, focusing forward. So anybody interested in having a conference next year, email me and let me know that you're interested.
Lynn, I didn't really
Dorothy.
understand what the topic would be.
Well, this area that Greg has sort of outlined for us of what Jean called the big space, or mindfulness, or spirituality, or that whole non-duality, but it would include all of that we've been talking about today. So anybody interested in working on that, let me know. Dorothy.
Here we go. Okay. And as Greg said, I think this is one of his favorite poets, a Japanese Buddhist poet. My hut lies in the middle of a dense forest. Every year, the green ivy grows longer. No news of the affairs of men, only the occasional song of a woodcutter. The sun shines and I mend my robe. When the moon comes out, I read Buddhist poems. I have nothing to report, my friends. If you want to find the meaning, stop chasing after so many things. A cold night, sitting alone in my empty room, filled only with incense smoke. Outside, a bamboo grove of 100 trees. On the bed, several volumes of poetry. The moon shines through the top of the window, and the entire neighborhood is still, except for the cry of insects. Looking at this scene, limitless emotion, but not one word.
Beautiful. Thank you all so much. And we will have a brief planning meeting for the planning committee at 10 o'clock. So I look forward to seeing you planning people there. See you next week, everybody.
Thank you, Greg. It's wonderful.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Greg,
Bye.
can I
Bye
have
bye.
a word with
Thank
Greg
you,
before
Greg,
you?
and everyone. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'll
very
hang
much.
around for a bit. That's fine. Yeah.
Is Greg still here? Yes,
Yeah, I'm
you
still
are.
here. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I loved your presentation, and Jim is on the planning committee too, and Dorothy, and it would be wonderful if we could plan to have a conference, and love to have you participate. You have an important element in there.
Yeah,
I've been wanting
in spirit, more than happy to do it.
I've been wanting to do that for years, but everything has interfered. But I think
life is so full of many things.
Right. Well, thank you very, very much.
No, my pleasure. Thank you. Yeah.
It's amazing. Like the content was very rich, but what I felt was your warmth and your presence. It just permeated the room. So thank you.
Thank you.
And in line with that, you were a wonderful bridge of the academic and research and the contemplative big space, and you were embodying that bridge, and that was lovely.
Thank you. Yes, that was the intention.
Yes. You were able to do that. We could feel it. You were bringing us that ontology.
Yes.
Katerina, thank you for all your help there.
Yes.
Well, I'll send through that writing scaffold to Katerina and to Vivian, who I was talking to, and you can. It might be useful.
Oh, great! That's wonderful.
Yeah.
September, while the clocks are still. Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we?
I'm encouraged to get other voices.
We have a spot in September. Would you like to book it now? It's we have September 1, September 29.
September 1st would be good if you could do it, because it would be in that same.
Yes, in the writing. Yes, the writing.
Let me just see what the time zone is.
Yes.
September 1, that's before the time changes in November.
Yeah, that's probably right. Yes, yeah. Looks like it.
Yeah.
It's 8 a.m. in New York now.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, when we start. I mean, yeah. So I could do that. I was just thinking of offering it as a resource, but if you want me to talk to it, I could certainly do that. Yeah.
And it would be very nice as the last one.
With your writing, are you just trying? Like, I've actually got two writing scaffolds. One that I use for my collaborative writing group in one of my reflective practice groups, and one that I use for myself for poetry writing. Would they both be relevant to your people's writing interests?
Sure.
Yeah.
Usually we have the person speak for a few minutes about what they bring to writing, and then we have some kind of prompt and have people write for 10 minutes, and then in breakout rooms either read what they wrote to each other or talk about the process, and then come back, and some people will read to the whole group. That basic sort of model, so people some time to write and to talk about it. And so you could present both or one, depending.
Well, how about I send them through and you can decide whether you'd like that or not.
Okay,
that's probably sensible. Yeah.
Thank you. So
all right.
So we'll see you rather soon. That's great.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm all in favour of giving lots of voices a go. So I'm a little uncomfortable with being that soon, but if you want it, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. September 1. Yeah.
Well, we have plenty of room.
Yes.
Everybody else to talk.
Oh, we're delighted. Yes.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, and thanks, Katerina, particularly for you and Yvonne for creating a space for me. So thank you.
Yeah. We'll see you then in
okay.
September.
And this is the first the first daisy at bloom just in time for your talk.
Beautiful. Thank you, Daisy.
Yeah.
All right. Bye-bye then.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you.
Wow, Lynn, I'm very interested in what you're talking about, a conference about practicalities for focusing.
Not practicalities.
Just
would be on spirituality and mindfulness and the big mystery, and we would have to. It would be about. I had once initiated a conference, psychoanalytic conference called Beyond Words, and maybe
Beyond Words.
Beyond Words, right?
Yeah.
Like that.
Should we call it that?
That might be a nice name.
Oh, beautiful. And
because it includes everything.
Yes, it does. And do you want to do that the whole month of December, or I'm just being me?
You're being, yes. No, well, I'm thinking we're
have it's a few days in a row.
We'll see who wants to work on it, and maybe have it in the spring as a day-long conference on a Saturday or something.
A day long on a Saturday.
Different. We can have different speakers. Donata, Greg,
Dana, Farouk.
Many different people we have to represent that. Mia.
Yeah.
And would be very fun to work on. So, could you, Katerina, could you baby me and send me the latest schedule? I got.
Should I do it by? Should I put it in the chat or do it? What the best way? Email?
Yeah, just email it to me.
Okay, I will. I will email it.
And I'll see you at 10.
Yeah, see you at 10. Yes, I'll email that to you.
Okay, great.
Okay.
See you soon.
See you soon, yes.
Okay, this is our planning meeting with our helpers group.
May I report too?
Yeah. I think we all. I was just saying that that little part where hi Liz.
Lynn.
That little part where he was answering Abby and talking about moving from different models. That would make a good little video clip just in and of itself, I think, because that was very clear. And there were other parts too that we could just take little clips of. What was I going to say? Oh, that's what we're trying to do with the helpers group, in a way that us are having all of these different mediums and messages and models, and sort of going from one to another. I sort of really love that. We don't know where we're going to be in what universe we'll be in the next, in the next meeting. And yet there's a continuity of our group, people who come all the time. So why don't we just have everybody say a word, concern, thought, very briefly, and then we'll go over our schedule and we'll have a more thorough meeting next time. Just whatever is on your mind, just so we're all here. Why don't you? Yeah,
what's
go
on my
ahead.
mind is Anna now in our committee? Hi, Anna.
Anna?
Oh, I see. That
She's probably sleeping,
It's muted.
Yes, she's probably sleeping.
Okay. Well, we'll have a sleeping Anna with us for the meeting, because I don't think she can hear us.
I'm kind of a nervous wreck in the sense that I have to present in a few weeks, and I feel like don't want to just present my picture. I don't know. I feel like I have to do something important, and I'm kind of going in a crazy pre-presentation pressure, horrible inadequacy thing, not fitting in, terrible thing. And I thought maybe coming here would make it a little easier in some way, like a little transitional moment for just a few people.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you came. But you come
Anticipatory
anyway.
dread.
I think we have to newly remember, and I do every time I present, that we're just starting a conversation. We're not giving words of wisdom. We're starting a conversation, and we all start the conversation in a different way. In a way, it's like people are really being whatever they are, and we're having an interaction with the person's being. And you were such a breath of fresh air last time, Liz, and anything that you present for us and show us will be evocative, and that's what we want, especially for August. What we want is just to evoke people's writing and have them try it out.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
I'm wondering, does that help, Liz? First of all, I'm just really glad you're here. Second of all, I'm just really glad that you said that, and I liked what Lynn said, we're just starting a conversation. And I suppose that's I believe that's the benefit of Help for Helpers. We get practiced with just not having to be anything other than we are in the moment, and it's trusting that. Well, trusting myself with that. It makes it such fun, that I can just jump in and make a dog's dinner out of it.
Right.
Or fucking blind and say, oh shit, why did I say that? And then come back and soothe. So I'm wondering, did Lynn's soothing help? Did it help?
Yes, very much so. And I remembered that people do welcome a little creativity. I think I was particularly intimidated today because he's got, research and it's academic and it's, it just feels like it's this sort of, it just feels trivial to just come in and play in some way. But I know that that's silly. That's, there was the haiku man who I left. Forgot his name.
I think he's coming. Is Julian coming next week? Oh no, you're thinking of Yao. 19th. Right.
Yeah. And that, we can't, because thank you. I mean, that it does help. I was just getting really overwhelmed by the kind of academics of You know, that's just my stuff that got triggered about being
Right.
inconsequential and silly
Right.
and childish.
Right. Well, I love that about our Help the Helpers project, is this diversity and just having all these different parts of ourselves that we have collectively. And some will speak, but there was also something else. I remember writing in a psychoanalytic paper that it isn't like we're just flying by the seat of our pants as therapists in our improvisation. The client or the group has the other wing. You know, it's we're not doing this alone. We're offering something, and people are taking it where they want to take it.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, like, Lizzie, you have such like a nitty-gritty groundedness, genuineness, you know, it just, you come out and give to us so much. And it's such a unique way of writing, you know, not
Right.
everybody does this kind of writing. So it's very, very fresh and new and alive. And, you know, I appreciated Greg's presentation very much, but I know in my group, some people tuned out because they couldn't follow the content. And so, you know, you're in a whole different dimension as he talks about all these dimensions of communication, and being, way of being. I'm just in awe that you're willing to do it. You know, that you're, I know courageousness is an overused word, but there is a part of me that feels like it draws on a courage, that your willingness to just step out there in spite of the dread feeling.
Yeah, I found him hard to understand, actually, is the truth. And it was a lot of stuff, you know, condensed, and I would have preferred it if he had stretched and maybe had a little less, but filled it out in some more understandable. To me, it was hard to translate the ideas to something real that could be used.
Well, because he isn't the usual person here. So
Right.
no, for example, that not everybody knows, you know, that when you're referring to doubling in chapter 7 of a process model, that you're going to lose 80% of the people there.
Right. Yeah. Excuse me. I'm plugging in my iPad. Yes, but it's many people who study the process model feel like, oh, you know, our little corner of the universe is being represented. You know, and you're representing another corner of our universe, Liz. So anybody else? Just let's everybody just say a word, anything about where you are, and then we'll just go over our schedule and we'll have a briefer meeting this morning.
Even though I've spoken, I feel like that almost I've used my turn to talk to Liz, you know. So I want, you know,
we
that
want to
feeling.
hear from you.
Huh?
We want to hear from you, Pauline.
I know, but you did hear from me. But that's what happens, is that I kind of take care of something there, and then it's like, oh, it's like I can't talk again. So I wanted to say that, you know, it's like sometimes that it's the pouring in, pouring out, fitting in, and relating. But it was the relating this morning to Greg, and it was just such laugh out loud fun. And Jim and I were there, and Jim was saying, and this is where it takes so long. It's like, what was Jim saying? Okay, can I get this together long enough? And Jim was saying, yeah, he has no problem with the felt sense, but sometimes it takes him so long. It's the next day before the felt sense gives you the words. And I just thought that was hilarious. And the hilarity was kind of the following on from Greg's into the big and there again, like maybe everyone, what maybe people know genes, so it was oneness or whatever word he used, you know, but that holds us, that holds us, and that's intelligent, and that is benevolent and kind, and we can find ourselves in that once. Well, I can't talk for a wee, but maybe I can talk for a wee if there's different parts of me that are really needing to understand that actually it's all okay. It's all okay.
Right.
I just wanted to say that. That's more than a word.
I love that you said, oh, maybe I can speak from a we, the different parts.
Yes, yeah. Thanks. Vivian, how about you? Say a word to us.
Today I was lost actually. I don't know where I was and what he was talking about.
Yes.
Actually, when I suggested his name to the helpers group, I just thinking, he is I know he's doing something interesting and profound.
Yes.
To me, but I don't know exactly what that is. But I think the good part for me is that last time, for some reason I was late and I didn't hear some of his presentation, and so he suggested to do an exercise with me, and so there I have the kind of first person experience with what
wonderful.
Yeah, and then I think yeah, there's something he can share to this group, and but today I was lost totally.
I'm glad you had that one-to-one experience.
That's fun. Yeah.
Katerina, you have a word for us?
I wonder, perhaps if his slides had been half as many, that might have been helpful. Also, if someone like Katerina gave a quick 3-minute process model stint before it started, so that we'd have something kind of to weave in for everybody.
Yes, that sounds like very good suggestion. Absolutely. Yeah. Dorothy, do you have a word?
I'm thinking about today, like if he had interaction earlier, because when we interacted, it seemed to come alive.
Yes.
That's
yeah.
Kind of what I'm feeling.
Yes. Maybe when we have things that are more academic or less known, we could have an introduction to it and then ask people to focus on something of their own experience and then do the presentation. If we changed the format a little bit so that people could interact sooner. I don't know, but that would be an interesting thing to think about.
Well, maybe if we just tell the presenter that we need people to interact sooner. And
yeah,
they would present differently then.
Yes. Yeah. It's like they could have a little presentation of something, an introduction, and then some interaction, and then go further. And what about, Jim, a word from you to yourself?
I like this kind of a presentation. So I'm at odds with everybody else. So I'm just saying, there's a whole world out there, and I'm in it.
Well, I know you always like to be the misfit, but I liked it too.
Well, yeah, but you are a misfit.
Well, you convinced us that we're all misfits.
Yes.
Well,
now
you're
we're
sort
united.
of you're the philosophers, that you get into the theory more than a lot of other people are able to do. And you have the background.
That's why I questioned the theory with my question. And I wanted to support Dorothy's question because I thought she stopped too early.
You were after something, Dorothy, and we got almost there, but not quite. But it really was impossible to get everybody into it with that shorter presentation. But I'm hoping that his doing the writing thing will be more experience near, because we'll be actually writing.
Oh, I forgot. He's doing one of our August.
Yeah. Yes, September 1, September
1st.
Yeah.
Oh, that'll be interesting.
Is September
Yeah. We
Monday?
get September 1st. Yeah. I sent you all the new updated roster by email.
Yeah. Could we take a look at that together?
So you all have it. Each of you have it. Some of you have it huge, and then I made it large that it requested. Also, I'll mention about Greg is that they have a changes group, and I've been several times, and he's very good and practical with everybody there. He doesn't intimidate anyone.
If we could look at the roster together, I thought that Julian is doing August 5th. Did we change that?
Nobody said anything.
No,
we've been phoning him twice a week, a couple of months.
No, I spoke to him in person, and I told everybody.
Oh.
So I thought that Anna was, I mean, I haven't been keeping track well because I'm kind of on vacation here, but yeah, Julian is.
Oh, maybe you sent to my old email address.
I'll make sure. Well, I can just reply all to this roster and get everybody right. But I thought we had also talked about it in the meeting last time that Julian would do.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No one told me.
So
I thought Julian had a date.
Yeah, August 5th.
Oh.
But
Anna has the same date.
Katerina has somebody else down, I think.
Anna.
August 5. Sure that Anna's very flexible. She can do another time. So that's good. Okay. So I'll let her know.
Right. So we have Julian for next week. And then Sandra. And August 19th.
Liz Preston.
No, I'm not doing writing. How did we get me in there?
Maybe Anna could do that day.
Yeah.
It sounds familiar though, the 19th. Isn't that Yao? Yao is doing the 19th.
Yeah, it should be Yao.
Yeah. Let's confirm these also with everybody, but Yao is the 19th. And then Liz is at the end, and then we'll have Greg September 1st and Steve the 8th, and Robert Bruger. Maybe we could have Anna.
You reading off the screens? I'm just faking it. I don't have the screen in front of me.
I'm reading Katerina's email.
Okay. I probably can't do that and be present at the same time, but I'm following along.
I mean, the next open date is September 29th. So maybe we should put Anna in there.
That sounds good. Although she's doing writing, right?
Yeah, I know.
So
so who but so's Greg, and that's September 1st. And is Steve doing writing? I'd hate to move Steve.
No,
No.
we better not move Steve because it was so hard to get a date.
Exactly.
I have to.
You could probably switch him with Robert Bruger, who's probably open.
Is Robert? How about instead of having? I think Greg was flexible. We could have. We could have Anna on September 1st, and then have Greg later on, since we just had him. We
just had Anna also.
Oh, that's true. Well, let's have, if Anna is okay with it, let's have Anna later on, and we don't have to have all of the writing things together. What do you think? What do you think we should, what does everybody think?
I think Anna was really good, and she had flagged that she was coming on, so it'd be pity to move her on the writing. It seems different than what she had presented.
Well, we need to have Julian on the 5th, because it's very hard to get him, and it's hard to get Sandra Pearl.
Right.
I think we should have Anna on September 1st, and then have Greg present sort of a second part of his thing with the writing that would make it more concrete later on. Or have Greg do it on September 15th, and have Robert do it the next open space. What is everything?
That sounds good to me.
Okay. Greg won't mind switching.
Are you all looking at some mail you got?
Yeah.
I see.
Katerina sent us all an email.
Okay, I haven't gotten it, but thank you. I just wondered, I saw everybody reading something. And wondered what you were looking at.
At 9:58.
Oh, I have it now. Thank you, Katerina.
I keep replying as you keep making changes.
It's now in the chat also. That helps.
Right. Yes. So we're making Greg on September 15th. Is that right?
Yes.
I don't think it's right to change Greg since we just booked him. I think it's very bad.
You do? I think he was very,
well,
it was sort of impromptu.
Okay.
Ask him, and I think, Anna's also very flexible.
She's been flexible many times, yeah.
And she, she could probably fit in any date. She's also given her talk on felt sense writing before, and you can actually find it on the internet if you look. In fact, my worry is it'll be too much like the previous time.
So Jim, give us your rendition.
My rendition would be to have Anna on the 15th and Robert Kruger on the next open date.
Yeah, on the 29th, Robert.
Yes.
That keeps the
29th.
writing people together. Yes, that's good.
That's the least, people move the least distance.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay, so I'll email Robert Kruger. So we're saying for him on the 29th.
Yeah.
Right. So we're set for September, right?
Yes, assuming everybody agrees with their movement.
Yeah, I think they will.
There was a question about the 22nd of September. That you have a special day, Lynn, a new project that you're launching on that day?
Oh, yes. September 22nd is, when are we having those people on the channel? When are we having that meeting of the new, we're doing a new organization of focusing oriented therapists? I forget what date that is.
I think it was the 22nd, wasn't it?
Was it a Monday?
It wasn't in the morning, no, unless I have it roll wrong.
Right, no, it wasn't in the morning.
So in the afternoon, or late
Yeah.
afternoon even.
Well, I'd be glad to do the 22nd, or have the people working on that do it, or talking about the channel. We could have the people involved with the channel talking about video clips. I'm not sure. What do other people think?
That sounds really good. So you have it all in one day. I did have a question about Anne Harmon, who is the Feldenkrais person who talked many months ago about giving something about finding your voice. Do you want to say no, never? Or do you want to?
Why would you say no, never?
Well, or do you want to say, offer her another date? She's been waiting all summer to hear what you say about it.
What did say a little bit more, Katerina? I'm not.
Oh yeah.
It.
Okay, so there's a bunch. When the voice, the speaking voice, of course, comes from God and the ground. It also comes from the hyoid bone and the lungs. And so we have, in Feldenkrais, we have many different ways of cultivating the speaking voice. And she is an osteopathic doctor as well. And she's been practicing for 50 years. And she gives a very good workshop on the hyoid bone, but we won't do anything that technical. It's just, since we were having a variety of Feldenkrais people, and there is some, Michaela Herbert is part of it, wondered about this. So what more can I say? She's in Florida. She traveled a lot. She
wants to do. Did she present for us before?
No, she never did.
Oh,
she never did. Okay. No, she never did.
I wonder if Katerina, if you could organize, instead of her doing it, a kind of panel of Feldenkrais people.
That's a very good idea. Yeah. And how
talking about Feldenkrais and focusing.
Well, the Feldenkrais process model people.
Right.
Them, yeah.
You could have a panel, Mikhail and
Yeah, really good. So that would be sort of in October, December.
Right. That sounds good.
Okay. Perfect.
Just on that idea, Lynn,
yeah,
a mention, as the saying court, a mention, you know, it's kind of maybe grouping ideas together. So you were asking about the conference, you know, and then it would be maybe just broadcasting it, or I don't know if you had an image of a day, or what was the, you know, so it's kind of just mentioning it and then putting it aside. But there's so much richness there.
Yes.
You know.
Yes. Well, I have to admit it came to me sort of spontaneously during Greg's talk that I had been wanting to work on a conference, and this would be the right time to do it, you know, in the spring. So I just wanted to get people thinking about it. But yes, when we do that, we could have a month of contemplative the way out people.
Robert Bruger is
that's right. You should be in that month as well.
Right.
Maybe we should start having Help for Helpers months. We have a writing month. Why should there only be a writing month? There should be a contemplative month.
That sounds like a good idea. So what month should we make like April or something like that, or March? Have the
we should probably ask when the people can show up before we force them into a month.
I think Robert would want to speak soon, though. He can speak again, but he had a lot of desire to show up.
But he also showed up late, and a lot of these people were there before him.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm not saying, I'm just saying April seems like, because I've already changed his dates around, so I just,
Well, you might as well get used to the Help for Helpers ways, which is your dates get changed a lot.
Vivian, do you have any input here about the idea of having a contemplative month?
I think it's let me just share that, you know, maybe just in China, for example, people often ask about the question like, you know, what's the difference between focusing and some mindfulness practice?
Right.
And we always, I think, you know, we are aware that there's some similarities and then there are differences. And so I think that's a good like a theme to go, you know, like, you know, a month for this. Well, it's just, you know, how many people, you know, in the focusing community we can find to talk about the similarity and differences between
you're right.
and or other religious practice. For example, I think I had the impression that like, you know, Catholic, they also have something like meditation. It's maybe a different name, but I think there has something like silence or stillness,
right.
Something like that. And I think if we can find people with experiences and being able to share this, I think that's adding something to the helpers group.
I think that's very, very good direction, that people are always asking what's the difference between focusing and mindfulness, or
mindfulness and Feldenkrais.
Mindfulness and well, in the conference, we can have all of these people speak for a little bit and all of that if we have a day. But I think that that would be a good, that people have different answers to that.
Yeah.
You know, not one answer.
I wanted to just bring something forward from a breakout room. It's very quick, but it is around language and words. And I was talking to someone from China, and she was saying that she really has to work hard at understanding what is said before she can jump in. So I would like to sort of offer a space that we do something not through English, that we'd have a translator, you know, so that us that really are not having to work so hard, you know, with our English, that it would be even a relief not to have the English, you know. So I'm just saying that, Vivian, for that person that I really got it, you know, that we're so English orientated, you know, and we think that that is natural in some way, where maybe what might be natural is the felt sense, you know, or more natural. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that forward from one of the breakout rooms.
No, that's a very, very good point. I wonder, Vivian, if you have someone that would want to do a reflection in Chinese and then you would translate it.
Yeah.
Would that be possible? Or am I putting you on the spot?
Well,
Wow.
it's, well, how do I say that? It's not impossible, but it, you know, it may not be ideal, because I think, based on my own understanding, it's like, you know, the translation on the site immediately, it's a bit too much for me. And so yeah, if we really want to do it, I think someone maybe like Shijing is probably easier for, you know, because she lives in the States and she talk, you know, she use English all the time, but I'm not sure she's convenient of doing that.
Yeah, well, but let's mark, and we'll talk about it again, maybe a month of language and having things. Natty could do a presentation in Spanish, and it could be easily translated, and maybe Isabel would also translate, and then I think Zhijing would be a great person to translate. I mean, Zhijing could do the presentation in Chinese and English. But
for example, you know, if it's, you know, if it were for myself, for example, you know, I present in English and I can present in Chinese because it's my own language, and I can make it, you know, closer to my own intention. But like for me to translate for another person, and well, unless I know that person very well, I feel, you know, I may not translate that, you know, correctly, and then mislead, you know, for the whole thing. So for me, translate for another person is like, I can do that for 5 minutes, but not not more than that.
And yes. Well, we'll keep that. We'll talk about it in our next meeting, how we would do that. But the idea of different languages and different cultures might be a wonderful emphasis for picking a month for that.
Great, thank you.
But for now, we'll say maybe we'll do the contemplative one for April. Does that seem? I mean, of course, we're going to have to see when people can do it and whatever. But we'll come back to it. But I think we're all set for now, right?
I just wanted to make sure that we're still on board for Robert Bruger doing the 29th, though, of September.
Yes.
Okay.
Is everybody on board for?
And Katerina, you have that down. Okay.
And Katerina, could you send us the amended schedule? Because I wasn't able to change it. And the 22nd, we'll do something about the channel, the videos, the new organization that the channel people are suggesting, whatever. We'll keep that open. And those people on the channel committee, Jim and Vivian, can help decide what to do there. Is that right?
I'm sort of lost with that, but I don't need to be rescued, but I don't know what that is about, so.
Well, yeah. we have a committee that has the FOT channel, help the YouTube channel. And that committee is having some kind of a meeting about having a new organization for focusing oriented therapists on that day in September. So that if that's maybe Vivian and Jim and I could present something about that on September 22nd.
Yeah, I think there's a huge potential for getting good information out there, and networking, around, so that more people will hear these conversations, and they're just healing. That's my sense.
Right.
I'd love to. I'd hate to miss that. Thanks.
Oh.
Lynn, are you going to be going away for a week in October? You're
yes.
going.
Yeah. Yes, I'm going to be away that last week of October. But we'll have plenty of time to figure that out.
Yeah.
I think I've only missed one Help the Helpers meeting in 4 years.
Wow.
Maybe. I even if I'm on vacation, I love to come, but I can't. That week I'll be in Italy, in Rome. Any other thoughts before we go?
I think the helpers should go on tour.
That's a good idea. I like that idea. Okay, so I'll see you all next week. And I'm just going to confirm with Julian that he's doing next week, and then we'll confirm with all the people, the writing people, to make sure that we have it all straightened out, okay? And
Lynn,
send that to Christine. Yes.
It could do it either way. If you want to ask him if there's a particular poem he would like, or I could email him either way. I mean, you could send me his email either way.
He'll probably read his own poem. I'm imagining.
Great.
But let me give you. I think the best way is to to text him.
Oh,
And
okay.
I'll send you his text. I'll send you his information.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Bye, everybody. Thank you for everything. Bye. Have a good week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.